Our next guest is a true disruptor, a pioneer who transformed ride-sharing across the Middle East and Africa and also Pakistan. He co-founded Careem, which was so successful it made a $1.3 billion exit to Uber as the region's very first unicorn. Now, the global pandemic, though, hit their bottom line, wiping out as much as a third of their workforce. Hadley asked Mudassir Sheikha how Careem has weathered coronavirus and how he sees the company evolving into the post-COVID economy.
There is, in some places, drivers have sort of moved on from ride-hailing and gone back into what they were doing previously or started doing deliveries. But they are coming back, Hadley. It's just a slightly slower process to increase supply than to increase demand. So as the demand is picking back up, as the prices are rising in some places, the drivers and the captains, as we call them, are finding those opportunities interesting and coming back. But we are still in the early phases of recovery, at least in our region. So the shortages are not anywhere close to acute. You can still get a ride in most cities in a few minutes without any.
What about the food delivery business in that sense? Because I was told that it's really not the time to prepare the food. It's actually just trying to get somebody who can get it from point A to point B. And that's where you see the shortage. Is that something you're finding?
Not quite, because in some ways, if you look at our super app strategy, not only do we have demand synergies where people that have used us for ride hailing now can start using food and grocery deliveries from us, but at the flip side, we have supply synergies as well. So a lot of people that at certain times of the day are used to moving people around are now doing food deliveries and grocery deliveries at other times of the day when they're less busy. So we're not seeing the kind of shortages that you're describing. If anything, this sort of throughout the day demand is actually helping us retain our captains on all the verticals and on the Careem platform.
In terms of the super app, obviously this is a new era for doing business. How have you had to be adapting or nimble, if you will?
Yeah. So look, the super app basically brings multiple services that Careem offers and also third parties offer on a single app. And as soon as the pandemic hit, and now we're coming out of it, as the composition of services that people need changes, the services on the super app changes. So for example, in the early days of the pandemic, there was a big need for a service called Order Anything. People can order a captain and get that captain to take things from point A to point B or buy something from them from a store. So those kind of services were the need of the day at that time. And when you open the super app, you basically see those services. Whereas if you open the app now in the morning, we expect that you probably want to go from point A to point B and we show you those services. But look, like I said, in all cases, when people have tried the convenience of the super app and they've gotten used to some of the services that we have on the super app, whether it is food, groceries, ad hoc deliveries, they do tend to use them even when life is starting to get back to normal.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously, as we say, it's required some forethought and companies to be nimble at this point. Where are the opportunities, though, that you see in our part of the world? I mean, put on your innovator's hat, if you will. The Abraham Accords opening up some serious potential opportunities and tie-ups for this part of the world. Now you're entering that post-COVID phase with a country, specifically the UAE, that has a very high vaccination rate. Where do you see the next opportunities for a unicorn?
It's a great question. And let's just recognize that even in the services that we currently have on the super app, such as ride hailing, food delivery, grocery delivery, we're still extremely early. Most of these services have single-digit % adoption of the entire market. So there is no room for, there is no sort of shortage of opportunity in those segments. But having said that, as we've also seen, there has been an increased influx of funding to startups, and the ecosystem is thriving. Every day, there are companies raising millions of dollars. And what we have realized when we've spoken to many of these companies is they are actually struggling with some of the same things that we struggled with 5 to 7 years ago. They're struggling with last mile logistics. They're struggling with payments, especially cash payments. And one of the places where we are focused and where we see an opportunity is to start enabling these B2B services focused on these new startups that are starting to raise money and start scaling their businesses. So we have a last mile logistics business now that we call Careem Express that has exceeded our expectations, and we're in very, very active pursuit of what we're calling Careem Pay, which is the payments business within Careem that basically productizes a lot of our capability and exposes that to the ecosystem to start accepting and dispersing money in the 15 countries in which we operate quite seamlessly.
What about what happens next in your view? Because it's interesting, I've been speaking to UAE officials about the strategy for the UAE over the next few years. It's less of a kinetic approach, less of a reactive foreign policy approach, and one that is much more about exerting a soft power and influence throughout the rest of the region. And part of that is a major push to be innovative, to open the door to businesses, to foreign direct investors, and to frankly work with anybody who wants to be in this country and to do business and to create jobs. Where do you see that job growth coming from over the next 10 years?
So, of course, technology development, technology businesses will start to see more and more job growth. And in sort of in that way, UAE is actually very, very well positioned, because in the UAE, we have an infrastructure that has a very strong value proposition for top technology talent. And as the region starts becoming more technology savvy and starts using these online services for more and more daily things, you will see UAE becoming a more central part in services that are being delivered anywhere in the region.
You were the first unicorn in the MENA region to make an exit, over $3 billion, of course, and that was to Uber. Anyone you're seeing out there in the space that looks as if they could make something similar at this point, or we got a long way to go in terms of that ecosystem?
We're not very far from having a few more unicorns in the region, Hadley. The momentum in the ecosystem is just incredible. There are some very strong entrepreneurs building new businesses. And
give me some names. What's interesting?
I'd be afraid of missing anyone out, but there is a lot of exciting activity. You know, one thing that did change as a result of Careem becoming a unicorn, Souq getting acquired, COVID accelerating digital adoption, a lot of the top talent in the region, instead of wanting to go and work at multinational businesses, now they actually want to build startups. So all of a sudden you have top talent choosing to do entrepreneurial activities, and you have investors realizing that this is a big opportunity, funding these entrepreneurs. So it's a magical combination, and there was no shortage of opportunity in the region to begin with. So all these three factors are starting to come together to, inshallah, create a lot more unicorns over the next few months and years.
Given your experience, what is it, in your view, that they're going to have an easier time with at this point? Is it going to be just fundraising generally?
Yeah. So definitely fundraising is becoming easier, which is a huge blessing. Finding top talent to build these products and build these businesses is starting to become easy, because top talent sees the value in building these entrepreneurial ventures. But scaling a business is still hard. You still need to go and expand to all of those markets, get customers to trust you, get them to keep using your platforms, deal with the operational complexities of running a business, running a technology business in this region. It's not easy. So my sense is that funding is going to be solved, initial talent will be solved, but talent and scaling, the talent that can help scale is going to be the next frontier that we have to conquer.
What about the job situation for Careem specifically? Because I know that there was some major hit as we saw COVID-19 coming on back in 2020. Where are you with jobs today? How many jobs have you been able to reabsorb as a result of things moving to this sort of post-COVID economy?
So we are very aggressively recruiting for all the businesses that we have started and are looking to grow. So before the pandemic began, we were largely a ride-hailing business. But now we have a very meaningful food delivery business. We have a rapidly growing grocery business. We have a pretty large payments business that is starting to become even bigger. And for all of these businesses, we need talent.
And then in terms of that rate of rehiring, I understand from the numbers that there was something like a third of your workforce you had to slash back at the beginning of COVID. How quickly are we going to bring those folks back in terms of just the numbers?
Yeah, so look, the pace of hiring is pretty rapid. And if this pace continues, then we should be back to those levels by the end of the year, most likely. But this workforce that we'll have, we'll actually be building a lot more businesses than we were building before. Because as a result of the COVID and a lot of the innovation that happened in the last 2 years has actually made us a lot more efficient in the way that we run the business. So as the recovery happens, we will be scaling and growing a lot more efficiently than we were maybe operating the business before the pandemic.